I want the tapes. I want the tapes. The people are calling for the release of the tapes. Mayor Pete Buttigieg, release the tapes. Welcome. For those who don't know, this is Elder Emoja Ajabu, your host for Ajabu Speaks. This program is dedicated to stripping the clothes off of well-dressed lies, and there's a bunch of well-dressed lies running around here. One of the lies that's being told is Pete Buttigieg saying he can't release the tapes of the racist recordings of the South Bend Police Department. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about that in depth. You are listening to the most truthful talk show host in the business, unbought, unbossed, and unafraid of the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the butt-naked truth. So if you can't stand the truth, I would suggest that you situate yourself elsewhere, because we're going to deal with the truth. This past week, on October the 28th, 2019, I was invited to South Bend. Not only me, our organization, Economic Freedom Fighters Indiana, was invited to South Bend to take part in a press conference where the citizens of South Bend were calling for Mayor Pete Buttigieg and the Common Council to release the tapes, or actually calling for Buttigieg to release the tapes, and if he did not release the tapes, calling for the Common Council to hold him responsible and force the tapes to be released by the lawsuit that they have filed. At that press conference, Black Lives Matter, South Bend, us, Economic Freedom Fighters Indiana, EFFI, the South Bend Leadership Coalition, and area ministers and residents are called for the release of the scandalous police tapes. Per the most recent South Bend Tribune, which is the newspaper there in South Bend, the announcement of the South Bend Common Council, which in most places is called the City County Council, but in South Bend they call it the Common Council. The president, Tim Scott's release, and the Young Turks report, everyone should be demanding transparency from Mayor Pete Buttigieg and the South Bend Common Council. The coalition is calling on the South Bend Common Council to do everything in their elected powers to get the tapes released. They are also calling on the mayor and presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg to be truthful and accountable to the South Bend taxpayers and residents. The mayor of South Bend has contributed or continued to label these tapes illegal or jam them up in court, whether it was state court or federal. The tape issue has been a drain on South Bend for the past 7 years, while costing taxpayers more than $2 million. There is more than reasonable concern and now proof that there are racist officers working to incarcerate and frame defendants of African descent in South Bend. Over the years, Mayor Pete has defended the release of the tapes by stating this case could be a federal wiretapping case. which is not true. And we got the evidence to say that. Throughout the years, this false claim has been debunked by members of the public and even the U.S. Attorney David Capp. I got his letter. We're going to look at Attorney General David Capp's letter. And it's going to nullify, neutrify, even identify Pete Buttigieg as being a man not telling the truth when he's saying because of the law or because of a federal taping case or because of a state case, he cannot release the tapes. Now, redacted reports of depositions that were taken years ago have been unveiled by the media, basically the Young Turks, and it is even more necessary that these tapes get released. We are demanding the release of these tapes so South Bend can begin to heal. The city cannot move forward until all doubt is answered and members of the public can begin to trust their law enforcement and judicial system once again. Well, it's going to take time because that trust has been lost and losing more every day. Mayor Pete Buttigieg says that he cannot release the tapes because it might be against the law. When we stood there and we demanded the release of the tapes, they got a comment from Mayor Pete Buttigieg. When the lady asked him about the release of the tapes, this is what he said.
Need to follow the law.
I am as frustrated as anybody, as the mayor, not being able to hear or know what's on the recordings or see them come to the public. But if there's a legal way to do it, I'm confident that this court process will lead to that happening.
If there's a legal way to do it, well, Mayor Pete, the lawyer for the city, who represents the city, who's been paid $2 million and more coming, Scott During, received a letter from the U.S. Department of Justice concerning those tapes. In a letter dated May 31st, 2012, this is 7 years ago, David Capp, who is the U.S. Attorney General, stated the following to Mr. During. He said, "Dear Mr. During, in January 2012, this office, the United States Attorney's Office, U.S. Department of Justice, was presented with complaints that phone conversations at the South Bend Police Department were being recorded and listened to without the knowledge of the officers and persons speaking on these lines. Shortly thereafter, this office asked the FBI to commence an investigation because the interception of telephone conversations could violate the Wiretap Act, Title 18, United States Code, Section 2510, an act that generally prohibits the intentional interception, use, or disclosure of wire and electronic communications until a statutory exception applies. The following is a brief summary of that investigation. This is a letter from the United States Attorney for the Northern District of Indiana, Mr. David Capp, to the lawyer for South Bend, the city of South Bend, the mayor's lawyer, concerning the wiretapping, concerning the recording of conversations of police officers in South Bend. He goes on to say, approximately 2 years ago, which would have been 2010, during a change in leadership at the Detective Bureau, the chief of the Detective Bureau's line was mistakenly, you hear that? Mistakenly, not recorded, and the line assigned to one of the detectives in the Bureau was mistakenly recorded instead. Mistakenly, not intentionally, mistakenly. The law says that if the act generally prohibits the intentional interception, not the mistaken interception. The U.S. Attorney General found out that the recording of the officers, the police officers, was a mistake. It wasn't done intentional. So if it wasn't done intentional, the mindset, the mens rea, as they say in law, was not there for there to be a violation of the law. Are y'all listening to me? I'm telling you, I'm unbought, unbossed, and unafraid of the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the butt naked truth. If the recording of the police officers was not intentional, then there was no law broken. Once, and this is the U.S. Attorney General speaking again, he said once this was learned, the recording on the line continued. Ultimately, certain conversations from that line were placed on 5 cassette tapes. We have carefully reviewed this matter and the existing law and have discussed in detail with career experts in this area at the Department of Justice. It is our opinion, I being the United States Department of Justice, to include the United States Attorney General for the Northern District of Indiana, David Capp, it is in their opinion that no federal prosecution is warranted. In other words, no laws had been broken. Our investigation into the past practice and conduct of the South Bend Police Department in recording police phone lines is concluded and closed. Signed by David Capp, United States Attorney for the Northern District of Indiana. So Chief Buttigieg, not Chief, Mayor, acting like chief, acting like a dictator. The only thing that makes him not a dictator is he was elected. But he is flaunting the law. If you are flaunting the law, if this is not a country of laws, then you don't have a democracy, you have a dictatorship. And Mayor Pete Buttigieg, the federal government has said that they found no laws to be broken when the South Bend Police Department police were inadvertently recorded, mistakenly recorded, making racist comments about Chief Boykins, Daryl Boykins, who at the time was the police chief and the first police chief of African descent plus the disparaging comments that were being made also about the citizens of South Bend, who also were of African descent. Now you in your comments are trying to hang your head on the situation that, okay, the federal government has said no laws have been broken, but there might have been a law broken at the state level. Well, Mayor Pete, now, you got a lawyer. Scott During is a lawyer. Scott During is the lawyer for the city of South Bend. And if Scott During is a lawyer for the city of South Bend and passed the bar, then he knows about the supremacy clause of the Constitution of the United States of America. I just said something. I'm telling y'all, I'm unbought. And if you have a problem with the truth, you need to situate yourself elsewhere, because we're going to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the butt naked truth. I believe the Bible says that the truth, I think John, he said that the truth, I'm talking about a apostle of Jesus to Christ. He said the truth will set you free. Well, we gonna set you free today. Mayor Pete, we gonna set you free so that you can release those tapes. Because if you understand the supremacy clause of the Constitution of the United States of America, which is Article 6, Clause 2, it establishes that the Constitution, federal laws made pursuant to the Constitution, and treaties made under the Constitution's authority constitute the supreme law of the land. And thus, listen, and thus, I said listen, and thus takes priority over any conflicting state laws. What does that mean? If the U.S. Attorney General has said that no federal laws were violated, then it doesn't make any difference whether a law was violated of Indiana. It don't make any difference. If there was an Indiana law violated, it makes no difference, because the federal law is supreme. The federal law, I hate to use this word, but let me use this word. And don't y'all hold me, be mad at me because I use this word. But it's the word that fit. The federal law, here comes that word, trumps all state law. So even if you were able to find a state law that was violated by a recording of the states, being that the federal law said that there was no violation, then that neutralizes the state law. I'm telling you, I'm going to tell y'all the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the butt naked truth. Mayor Pete released the tapes, and not only released the tapes concerning the racist statements made by your South Bend police officers who suffered no repercussions, but you demoted Chief Boykins from chief to something lesser than chief, and he didn't do anything against the law. That was inadvertently done. That was mistakenly done. Yes, it was done under his watch, but it was a mistake. He wasn't the one making the racist comments. And you done nothing to them. You protected the racists while harming the victim of the racism. And the same situation is happening when you talk about the tapes in the death of Eric Jack Logan. Oh, Lord, Job, did you say that? Yes, I did. All of the tapes need to be released. And it was brought up. The sister from Black Lives Matter made it very clear that it appears that you are trying to change the subject so people forget about the death of Eric Jack Logan. For those people that don't know, Eric Jack Logan was supposedly breaking into cars on a parking lot. A call was made. The police showed up. When the police officer O'Neill, when he showed up, he supposedly saw Eric leaning over into a car with his feet all hung out of the car, supposedly stealing something. He said that he told him to stop when Eric got out of the car. He supposedly came out of the car with a knife. O'Neill was in fear of his life. How many times have we heard that? I'm in fear of my life. That's the same thing that the officer that arrested Sandra Bland that led to her death. That's the same lie he told. I'm in fear of my life because she was smoking a damn cigarette. But here it is in South Bend. O'Neill is saying he's in fear of his life because supposedly Eric is coming toward him with a blade. And because Eric is coming toward him with a blade, he shoots the man and he falls on the parking lot. Dying. One of the things that Mayor Pete says that he's done in South Bend is he has made sure that all police officers are equipped with body cams. But it just so happens that O'Neill's body cam malfunctioned. It ain't working. But there were two other police officers that showed up on the set. And they had body cams too. And not only did they have body cams, each one of the cars had dash cams. The day after Eric Jack Logan was shot, just hours after he was shot, myself and Achebe Latif went to the scene of the crime, looked on the parking lot, and we saw no blood on the parking lot. There hadn't been no rain. There should have been blood. If a man had laid out on the parking lot, there should have been blood on the ground. But Officer Nepper, who is a known racist, police officers have said that he has shown his racism in front of them and has reported it. But instead of him getting demoted, he got promoted. And supposedly he was so concerned about Eric laying on the ground, bleeding, laying on the parking lot, bleeding, he runs over there and picks up a 280-pound man and places him in the backseat of his police car under the auspices that he's going to carry that man to the hospital. Well, there's no blood on the parking lot, but there's all kinds of blood in the car. And none of the cameras are working. Mayor Pete, you man, who you expect to believe that, man? All of the cameras don't work. Blood in the car, but not on the parking lot, and you want us to believe that the man was shot on the parking lot? And you want us to believe that Eric Nepper, Officer Nepper, who's known to show his racist tendencies in front of your own police officers, known to do so, complained about him during training. They said, man, he just made all kinds of racist comments while he was training police officers. The police officers complained. And Nepper gonna pick up a 280-pound man, put him in the back seat of the car, and transport him to the hospital. And unfortunately, when he gets to the hospital, Eric Jack Logan's life has left his body conspicuously. And you want us to believe that a man with racist tendencies picked up a 280-pound man of African descent out of concern, hauled him to the hospital, and on the way, the man died from gunshot wounds. No, man. We can't believe that. I mean, we was born at night, but it wasn't last night. That makes no sense whatsoever. You done put doo-doo in the game, man. And it stinks to high heaven. And now you trying to tell us that you want to run the country the way that you are running the city? Who would have faith for you to do that? If you can't be trusted to be over little things, how can someone trust you to be over big things? Now, Pete, you need to go and take a seat. Cause what you doing, man, ain't nobody buying that. That makes you complicit with murder. That means that you hiding murder. That means that if someone gets killed and you know that they got killed, in fact you know that they were murdered, you know that they were innocent and they were murdered, then we can expect you to help cover it up. We don't need that kind of government in South Bend, and we definitely don't need that kind of government in the White House in Washington, D.C. Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm unbossed, and unafraid of the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the butt-naked truth. I pray that the God of justice continues to give Pastor Mario Sims to lead the entourage, to lead the call for you to release the tapes, not only in the situation with Daryl Boykins, but also in the situation with Eric Jack Logan. It is time for the truth to be told, because the truth will set us free. And we need to be free. Because if we don't be free, you know, Indiana has a law that says that if the police, or if you believe that the police are trying to arrest you illegally, then you have the right to use the force up to and including deadly force to stop the arrest. It's time for us to become law-abiding citizens. Yeah, we want answers. Release the tapes. Release the tapes. Release the tapes immediately.